This is Long Way to the Top, and I'm your host, Shane Bryan. Welcome to a very special edition of Long Way to the Top. It is the Think Loud edition. Think Loud for Parkinsons, of course, the brand new album, Ian's standing by, ready to hold it up, was released on Valentine's Day. And what a perfect day for it to be released on. It's something that we all have to think about. And three of the gentlemen who I guess were deeply involved in the creation of the album, Leo Sayer, Paul Mitchell and Ian Grant, are here with me today. And gentlemen, what a proud achievement that you guys have just manifested here into an album that is now out there in the world.
Thank you.
It's called Tenacity.
Tenacity. It absolutely is. Yeah. Let's kick off.
I think believing in a cause. That's what it's about.
I think let's kick off with Ian and Leo. I reminded them that it was 18 months ago that we had a conversation about the possibility of doing an album rather than just a single. What a journey it's been.
Yeah, it started off with that single, which Paul, of course, here was co-writer with Ian and with Josh Phillips, and then me getting involved because they called me up. Well, Josh Phillips called me up. It started with that, and we all thought it was good. And then I think Ian came up with the idea, really, that we should call around all our mates, support this. We got there were a lot of wonderful visitors to the album. To the video of Think Loud, which was on YouTube. And a lot of personalities and great voices were added, lots of people there, it turned into quite a production. And I think that gave everybody the idea that maybe, hey, this could expand,
Mm. And the whole concept of the album, just for those who, may not actually understand, but let's talk about it right out from the outset. It is to raise money for Cure Parkinsons, and Ian Grant, who is a manager extraordinaire, has been dealing with Parkinson's for how long, Ian?
9 years.
9 years. 9 years. And the concept of Think Loud comes from...
But it came out of the lockdown period, COVID.
Yeah.
And they had better to do, and Paul... showing to me that he could record and play himself on a track. And at the time, the Stones and Doobie Brothers, and Neil Young, they were putting out their own remotely recorded tracks.
Yeah.
And I thought, Paul could do this, and I could get the musicians. And that's where we started from.
Yeah, and of course, the Think Loud slogan comes back to a... something that you get taught when you're dealing with Parkinson's, to actually think out loud.
It's a program that basically Parkinson's sufferers have taken on from a book, and it's a brilliant thing. It means that if you have trouble communicating, you really sort of think about your words and you pull it together and you make your statements very clear and very crisp. And think loud, say what you mean. It's all there in the lyric.
It's worth just pointing out that the actual therapy itself is called LSVT, which stands for Lee Silverman Voice Therapy. Right. And we were very fortunate because by complete accident, Ian's been doing it. And as you saw him hold up that piece of paper with Think Loud on it, when he and I were going through these early productions remotely in 2020, Ian was doing his Think Loud sessions regularly, and he had that up next to him every time he was speaking to me. So it became something that I started to learn about. Yeah. But when we actually released Think Loud, this LSVT organization out of Arizona, they have they actually use Think Loud as a slogan for their therapy. They also have another one called Think Big, which is the physical therapy. But when we actually went out, the lady that runs that, she found our Think Loud video and it blew her mind that we'd been inspired by that to get started. And that's when she got involved and started to give us the help.
Yeah, because we travel along in our life and we do these things and we don't even think about it. But for someone with Parkinson, every moment is a moment that they have to stop and go, okay, how can I express myself? And I have to think loud.
Even things like walking get affected. You have to remember to go heel first.
Heel first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like learning lots of things all over again.
Yeah. It would be.
It's kind of like,
yeah.
It's almost like anxiety, when somebody says to you, slow down, you breathe slow, take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out. It's a process like that, and as simple as it is, it formed, I'm nothing to do with it, but it formed a lyric that Ian and Paul and Josh Phillips came up with, this amazing song. Now, it's very rare, I think, that a therapy is actually the song.
Yes.
And I think that's what was so intrigued me as soon as they played it to me.
Now, you can actually go back and see some of the original videos where we talked about the actual song. Let's talk about the next step, which is this amazing album that you guys have put together. And when you were first thinking about the idea, I mean, Leo and Ian talking about the album, and they've gone, oh, Paul, we've got this concept. Did you shudder and go, where am I going to start with all of this?
Well, to be honest, Ian and I had conversations earlier. I mean, we're both, the sad reality of the music industry is that streaming has become such a massive thing. It's much harder nowadays for artists to make money. I mean, okay, if you're getting millions of streams, you can make lots of money, but there is still a large amount of the music loving public that still do like physical product. Yeah. And we did discuss making a physical product sometime earlier before he even wrote Think Loud. We thought about it, but Ian, in all his years as a manager, had ended up with garage fulls of CDs or albums that hadn't sold. And that's really where we were worried to begin with. But we also had, we also had faith in the fact that if you've got a product to sell, you can say to somebody, that's $39.95, this is what you get, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The big challenge actually came when we were looking at what we had the 4 or 5, 6 tracks that we'd already done, which is not quite enough for an album. And then you've got to do one side and a second side. Then we started to create some newly created things. So we brought Richard Thompson and Hugh Cornwell together. They'd been at school. They recorded a new song, right? Or they recorded a new recording of an old song. And we created some new stuff. Hank Marvin with the Kodo drummers, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So what the challenge then was, I said this at the press launch the other night. Once you've got too much for one album, one LP, you've got to do a second, which means you've now got to find another 10 tracks, not another 2.
Yes.
So that's where we were able to, that's what took the challenge. But where it's worked out really well is that there's things like with Leo's track and the ones that were recorded at the G Live at the Gary Brooker Memorial, those are only licensed for the physical product.
Yeah, right.
So you can't get those on streaming. So if you look now on streaming on Spotify, there's only 15 tracks there.
Yes.
But there's 20 if you buy the album.
And let me say, so those tracks that were at the Gary Brooker Memorial, they are bloody good tracks as well. And there's some great artists on there, like Paul Carrick getting up and performing, with the likes of Mike and the Mechanics.
Yeah, there's 2 Paul Carrick tracks on the album, which is fantastic. Because what a voice, my favourite singers.
What a voice!
And there's such a the boys have rostered together such a collection of artists. And maybe I got involved as well. We've all kind of said to our mates, "You got to be on this album." So. There's some great characters, Arthur Brown, part of English history, along with Gary, Andy Fairweather Lowe, who is very famous for
guitarist with everyone, really, isn't he? Yeah.
And guitarist with Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
There's some very, very prominent musicians on this that have given their time. Tony Hadley, Spandau Ballet. There's so many great artists on here, so many great bands involved.
And you mentioned one earlier, Paul, that I thought really showed the spirit of cooperation here to get, 2 people from completely different worlds, Richard Thompson from, Fairport Convention and Hugh Cornwell from the Stranglers, right? 2 completely different worlds, and here they are performing together. and it's a great track.
Well, that was a happy accident, really, because Ian knows Hugh very well because he managed the Stranglers for all those years. I know Richard Thompson very well because I've been involved with Fairport since I was a teenager, and when we spoke, to them, that they'd both been at school together. Their first band was a band called Emil and the Detectives, and I think their first concert they went to together was the Nashville Teens, and they saw them performing Tobacco Road. They added that to their set list.
Yes.
And then we said, well, what would you do if you were to record something? And they said, let's do Tobacco Road. And then, of course, we needed a rhythm section, and we were able to call on Dave Pegg and Dave Mattox, the famous rhythm section from Fairport. And that came about quite quickly.
Yes.
And then Hugh helped us with the video production. But yeah, I mean, it's a one-off, right?
Yes.
So if you're a fan of the Stranglers or the Fairports, you can buy that.
Yes.
The same with it's a bit like a box of chocolates, there's something for everyone on this album.
It's like a licorice all sorts, really, isn't it? And when you've got all of these incredible artists there, and then you throw artists like Roger Taylor from Queen, and you bring that into the mix. Is there a lot of interest now in the media, especially in the UK, with artists who have got that status level interested in the album?
There should be, because basically it's a who's who of the British music scene over the last 20, 30 years, 40 years. It's it really is. I think we've got kind of most of the very important artists there. That's a fantastic thing.
It's interesting because the launch last week there was a lot of interest, in a lot of different people, and it's how you bring these people together. But as Ian said, going back to it, if Ian hadn't had the industry connections that he has going back decades, we wouldn't very easily have been able to say, oh, so and so. I think the only one that we really didn't know personally or hadn't had any previous connection with, and it was Debbie Grant, Ian's wife's idea, was Hank Marvin, right, Ian?
Yeah.
Which is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, you were sitting in that chair.
In this chair, and I said, "Epic, I don't know who to get for your guitar player." And she came up and said, "Hank Marvin." Brilliant idea.
Yeah.
the original electric guitar player.
The original.
So there was some moments, but I mean that started out with Ian's connection to the Kodo drummers of Japan,
right?
And I have to say, part of this whole remote recording thing, when we first started doing it, the sort of prerequisite was being able to have the wherewithal to record yourself at home, which people like Leo and some other people have got. Some people didn't. Arthur Brown didn't. We had to sort of do some really clever shenanigans with Arthur. But the second thing was to be able to film yourself. So when I sent the sort of backing track to the Kodo drummers of Japan, I said, well, look, just give me a two-channel stereo mix of you playing the drums, nicely recorded, and a video. And what they sent back was an unbelievable recording, but also all of them in their big training hall. It's like a big Japanese cathedral where they're playing. And then you add in Hank Marvin. And then Hank, I remember here in my dining room taking a call from Hank, and I sort of had to pick myself up off the floor because I answered the phone. And he said, oh, hello, Paul, this is Hank Marvin here. And I'm like, mind was blown. But he said, need a rock drummer on it. He said, could we get a rock drummer? And I said, well, do you know anybody? Who do you think? And he said, Roger Taylor would be brilliant. Now, Roger had recorded his own version of Let There Be Drums some time ago. So he was familiar with the track. And to be fair, he stepped up, did that. And then we had the track. It's just bonkers. And we previewed that at the launch the other night, and everybody was blown away by it.
Now, I guess it really comes down to you really show the true spirit of the UK music industry, because it's a matter of someone saying, oh, look, you know what, I know Roger Taylor, I'll get him on board, or I know so and so, I'll bring them on board. Ann Peebles and Deborah Bonham. You've got like a Led Zeppelin connection there with, you know what I mean? It's that spirit of community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there was a lot of that in, the cross-fertilization, if you like. I mean, I can tell my story of Marcy leaving.
Yes.
Now, Marcella Detroit was my backing vocalist, and we got on like a house on fire in 1982 when I made a record in New York and Los Angeles with Arif Mardin. And so we became firm friends then, and I hadn't talked to her for ages. So then Josh Phillips and Paul and Ian send over the track to me and say, would you like to do the vocal? And I do the vocal. And I'm thinking, who's that in the background? And it's Marcy. And it's just an incredible coincidence. So once we'd done that track, and once Paul and Ian said, we're going to do an album, the first thing I did was contact Marcy and say, hey, let's do a duet for this,
Yes.
So that's how these kind of cross-fertilize. Well, that's how these combinations grew, because people were seeing somebody else they knew on the album. They went, I want to be on that as well,
Now, your duet was Soul Mining.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where did that come about? How did that song come about?
Well, it was a track that I wrote originally for an album that I did called Selfie, which actually didn't get much attention.
Yep.
And I called it Selfie because I did everything myself, the whole bloody lot. I was just a completely selfish album, produced and written and made by me. But this track always kind of struck me, and I was really annoyed that it never had a chance to be a single. It's about, older guys who like soul music going around these record sort of sales. You have these record sales. You see them in a town hall. Everybody's selling their Stax and Tamla Motown records. And I know a bunch of these guys. And we go out and we search out rare records and then see if we can remake them into something new. And we do that with Chicago Blues, the same thing. Yeah. But that's what it's about. It's about people who really want to bring that album that back. And the first verse is, it's the death of Marvin Gaye and how much it affected me. Yeah. So, it's kind of all those things. And Marcy really felt that as well, because we had the same bloody heroes. Yeah, we loved that. We loved Aretha, and we loved, so you're talking, you got a record that is two people giving their feeling about music,
Yeah. Which
go back to the beginning. One thing that amazed me about Paul wasn't just knowing how to record remotely. He could actually operate someone's laptop from his own room. He did it with Arthur, didn't he?
Yeah, Arthur Brown desperately wanted to be involved, but we were in lockdown, and then I spoke to his partner Claire, and basically I said, look, if you buy yourself a laptop, she said, well, why don't you get me one? I got them a laptop, put the software on it, sent it to him by courier with a microphone and a set of headphones. And then I used remote software to be able to control his machine while I'm talking to him on FaceTime at the same time on my iPad. So that's how we did that. So that really was remote recorded. That was proper technology. Wow. But what I'm really proud of is the fact, and to be honest, it does take, a lot of people have helped in this, but there's also a lot, Ian and I have worked tirelessly for no real gain other than the satisfaction of being able to say we've done this and the money's going to go to Cure Parkinson's. Yeah. But there is a huge level of satisfaction. We were going through the track listings. I did the vinyl mastering myself, which I'd never done before, and that's a bit like rolling the dice. And then, I had to do 20 tracks. I got 19 right first time. One had to be redone, but that's the purpose of test pressings. Yeah. Then did all the artwork, laid out all the booklet, did all of that kind of stuff. Ian and I went backwards and forwards on that, editing that. Then I woke up in a cold sweat between Christmas and New Year and realised I hadn't put a credit or a picture of John Etchells, who's my mate who lives down the road, who'd worked with, George Harrison and all of that. And I thought, so we did, when the product finally came out, you think, great. And now that phase of the operation is finished, and now we're in the phase of now we've got to move some.
Now buy it. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you stand and look at it, people were really blown away. I didn't realise quite how much people were going to be blown away at the launch event when we were explaining who we had. I mean, the Gary Brooker track on this, the music was recorded live at the G Live with the band on stage, playing along to Gary's vocal from 2010 from a Boston gig.
Wow.
That is a piece of history. You cannot get that anywhere, right? So if you're a Procol Harum fan, and there are, there's a few thousand of those in the world, it's like, buy this just for that, right? Yeah. You're never going to get that again. And thanks to Frankie Brooker for allowing us to use some of those tracks on the album, Yeah. So there's some real gems, there, and obviously Leo's contribution has not been small by any means. Marcy, as you said, Tony Hadley, and you learn through this process as well. The people that obviously nowadays it's a bit easier to help, right?
Yes.
You can do things from home. You don't have to go to a studio, or you don't have to spend it, but you do learn who the people are that really want to help and where they throw the egos out the window.
Yeah.
Our good friend Leo Sayer is one of those people, and there's other people in this process that you learn and go,
Yeah.
I won't name, so I won't name and
I was about to break in and say, Paul, don't worry, we'll get them on album too.
Now, you guys also recorded a brand new track, and it was rather timely because he's been in the news a lot lately, but a Robbie Williams track, Angels. What made you choose that?
The producer, Steve Brown.
Right.
He called me in November of, what year it was?
21, I think.
Yeah.
Or might be 20.
He wanted to do, he wanted to do a remote track himself.
Right.
And he said, "Why don't we do one for Christmas? It's only 6 weeks away. It's too soon. Let's do one next year. Let's meet in January." Steve Brown had produced Wham, The Cult, Manic Street Preachers, and I was involved in the Cult period. And we were going to meet in January to discuss this track. And unfortunately, he died on Christmas Day, wasn't it? Well,
New Year's Eve it was, Ian.
New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So he knew what to do it. And then through he did a Soho, wife, Agent John Gilling, they betrayed us to go and do that version of that track.
And he'd already started working with a few people because he had a big Rolodex himself as well, obviously. So he had Tony Hadley on board, I think, and a few others. And then we basically just had to pick up the reins. And I think they'd already started thinking about Angels.
Yeah.
And our original idea for that, like you have big, you reach for the stars and get the moon if you're lucky. So our original idea for that was like, let's get a whole plethora of singers like they had on Band-Aid, and we'll get everybody to sing a different verse.
Yes.
Well, of course, you get a few people on board. Marcy was on board and Tony was on board. And Marcy thought originally she was going to be doing a couple of lines. And it ended up she was the whole thing. And that wasn't how she'd anticipated it, but it worked. It worked really well. There's a lot of people playing on that. Clem Burke did his drums from LA, and a friend of his, gave his studio for free because that was during lockdown. So he had to sort of play the professional card. He was allowed to go to work and play drums, but it was just him and the guy in the studio. The guy in the studio filmed it all, so we were able to sync up all the drums. Steve Norman helped with saxophone from Spandau. Glenn, our old mate Glenn Matlock, played the bass, etc., etc. But Tony, he desperately wanted to be on it, but his missus was really paranoid about him leaving the house. So I said, well, look, I'll come up and record you on the doorstep if you want. I'll just, And he said, well, and in the end, what we did was he actually sang the whole thing, videoing himself singing, and he sang it all into his iPad. So the vocal that was on the television and on radio too.
Yeah.
And it's singing into an iPad. So it shows you what the technology actually is, what you can do.
Yeah, it just gets better, doesn't it? It just gets better.
It shows you as well that there's a bunch of singles to come from this and a bunch of YouTubes to come from this. The album could have a very nice little piece of longevity, from this because, there's a few singles coming up on the way. I think you guys were suggesting that you've got the first one lined up. Is that right, guys?
Yeah, Ian?
Tobacco Road.
Tobacco Road, yeah. I mean, Loud is getting some plays as well at the moment, the track as well, because, Well,
we've got an opportunity, Leo, as you said, to try and keep this whole thing alive. So the plan at the moment is end of March for Let There Be Drums, end of April for Tobacco Road. Not quite sure what May is yet. I think we're doing Soul Mining in June or July. I think. Yeah, to coincide.
Because we got video. Everybody's been videoing. That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
We've got visual material. Some of it's a bit scratchy, but it's great, that it's real because everybody's put it together themselves, which is so fantastic.
Now, there's been a bit of press and Pete Townsend got involved in the press as well. He wasn't necessarily involved in this project, but there's a
It
lot
was for a day.
Sorry?
It was for a day.
He was for a day. What happened?
He said, I'll find you a track. And it was quite an amazing sequence of emails.
Yeah.
Where he said, I can't do this business. And I'm too old.
Yeah.
And after 6 months, continued emailing him, giving him a hard time. He came out and said, I have no time. I'm too old. I've got plenty of money. I've got lots of money. I'll give you some of that.
Yeah. Okay. So he helped finance it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
His contribution was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was Ian's persistence, really. Again, it was Ian's persistence, and we had, the sort of underpinning of all of this whole project was like, we've got to be like a dog with a bone, and we both have been like that, And it's got to be fair, Ian and I have had a lot of choice words and passion between us over this whole project, because it's taken a lot of effort for both of us, and Ian also coping with Parkinson's himself on a daily basis has not been easy for him or his family. But this whole project has given him a lot, given us both a lot of energy and a lot of impetus. But Pete was, as Ian said, he was going to give us a track. Then he said, I can't give you a track. But Ian didn't let it go. 6 months later, he said, I'll give you some money. And to be fair, that money was what ended up us being able to have a little bit of a float. Obviously, the charity want to keep hold of as much of that money as possible, understandably. But we were able to use some of that for some of the PR. We used it to finance the production, to pay for the first 1,000 albums to be made, etc. So Pete, in fairness, played a massive role in it. Despite him not being on the album. I still think he's a bit old and grumpy for saying he's too old to play, because he could still play, I'm sure.
Of course he could. Come on. Seriously.
Yeah, you should have put him on to me. I've persuaded him to do things before. He's a grumpy old bastard.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. There you go. Unlike your good self. That's what we're getting for
and of course, Leo, you've got a few tracks on there, including one of my favorite tracks from a Beatles, I guess, album, a tribute album you put together called Eleanor Rigby. And I must say, it's one of the best versions of Eleanor Rigby that I've heard.
Thank you. Well, again, I've been making records, by myself in my studio, very much in the spirit of all the contributors of Think Loud. And sometimes, you see the records sell, I suppose, then they get a few away, but you think, I want more of exposure. I think it's worth putting it out there. So I said to the guys, you can have Eleanor Rigby, because I'd love to see that kind of included on something. So, if it comes to it, I'll make a video for it. And it's just wonderful to be part of this. Look, Ian and I have to tell you, and probably a lot of people know this, we go back to the early 70s.
1968.
Actually, 1968, we've known each other in Worthing from that time. And when I found out that Ian was suffering from Parkinson's, and I've got a lot of friends here, fellow musicians and mates in other walks of life, suffering from Parkinson's, my heart went out to him for this project. I so wanted to be involved, and Josh Phillips, who's part writer again and musician and part of Kindred Spirit, who was, wrote the song with Paul and Ian, just phoned me up one day and said, we need some vocals. And I said, well, I can't give you a part of a vocal. I only want to sing the whole thing, because when he played me the track, I loved it so much. I just had to do it. That's what got me involved. But it's, and Ian is an inspiration, because the way he's fighting through Parkinson's should be a lesson to all of us, that if we can find a cure for this damn thing, and if we can get some money together to help find that cure, then God, it's justice well served,
Yeah, absolutely. So
it has been. It's been like a medicine. Music is medicine.
Music is medicine. And
sorry.
No, you go.
I've got to admit, on personal bars, it is self-indulgent, but nevertheless, the work. My grandson did the sleep with Harbour, and he was at the launch. And his photograph taken a lot of time.
Yes, I was going to mention. So your grandson actually did the drawing on the front cover of the album.
Yeah,
and then Paul cleaned it up and made it work for the album.
Well, you know, he did it as an artist would do. He used it, you know, he used pencil and pet and colors, and he colored it all. All of the colors were his, and then we had to scan that and get it edited to go on the album, you know, on the album cover, and then I laid out all the album cover. But yeah, he was there. It was amazing. And his, you know, Ian's daughter, his mum Kirsty was there as well, and his son. So the Grant family were all at the launch, and you know, Josh got his picture taken by all these photographers, which was really cool.
What a legacy! What a legacy to have, you know, down the track in years to come. To know that you know he was involved in just a little piece of history like that.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and I think the thing about this as well is that hopefully, you know, while we've all got air in our lungs and we can still keep going and doing this, there's no reason why we can't do more. We got to get this one going. But there are, you know, what I'd really like to get to is a stage where other people see it and like it, and then other artists go, "Oh, can I be on the next one?" You know, that's eventually what you want it to happen. You know.
Well, and let me mention as well. I was in the UK because you know I live in Australia, where I'm talking to you now from between Sydney and Canberra, but the guys are in the UK. But I was touring the UK, and it happened to be that there was an event for Cure Parkinsons, which Paul was at, and Josh Phillips was at, and lots of and Andy Fairweather-Lowe was at. Lots of musician friends were there. It was a very special event, and we got to sing the song, didn't we? It was a rough performance, but we did a performance of it. Paul very rarely gets his Les Paul out, only when he's recording, and we persuaded him to get on stage, and we were all there doing it, and it was a lovely moment. And I think Cure Parkinson's picked up some money that night from all of our presents as well. So you know, physically, that was a lovely moment because basically, you know, we all got together, we all met each other because we were all far flung all over the bloody world and everything. And it was nice to, you know, there could be events that come out of this. We want to try and support Cure Parkinson's as much as possible. We're getting them the money from the record, but we want to do more. And we hope that this is the start of something big.
You need to gate crash Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath's reunion. Given the fact that he's involved with Cure Parkinson, maybe throw some Metal Gear on, and you'll be perfect for it, Leo.
Next album, we'll do a duet, mate, and Metallica.
And
it's interesting because since Sharon, you know that connections happened, right? You know that Ozzy's agreed, and the reason it got on his radar was because of the guy that's working with him at the moment doing the video of their whole. He's currently filming this whole comeback, right? So he's filming Ozzy and Sharon at home, thinking about it all the way through to July. And that Phil, what's his last name, Ian? Can you remember? Phil Alexander is the director. He's a friend of Alan and Ian from years ago. Alan Edwards from Outside, and he just happened to be there when they were going. You know, who else are we going to give the money to? And then he mentioned the album, and they wanted to give it to Think Loud and realised that we weren't a charity. They wanted to, so it's going to Cure Parkinson's. But what I've got my eye on as a producer is to say, look, can we have some of the live recordings from your reunion, and we'll use that. You know, we put that album out, which will be it won't cost them anything to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely,
it'll allow us to produce it. But it's amazing that Ozzy's on board, Ozzy and Sharon. You know,
yeah. Well, like Ian, you know, he's going through Parkinson's himself, so you know, it really just sort of really makes you realise just how it is affecting so many people, and if we can get enough money to, I guess, find a cure and beat this bloody thing. You know?
Well, Cure Parkinson's is the only charity in the world that is actively raising money to find a cure. All of the other charities for Parkinson's, despite the fact that they are all amazing and do amazing work, they're really there to help people cope with living with it.
Yeah.
This is all about research, 100% research, which is why we really, you know, got involved with this charity. Because as you quite rightly say, you know, we've had some meetings and some calls throughout some of this process of people in various parts of the world and bringing people in, and they are close to, you know, there's new trial drugs, there's things that are happening. Yeah. So with the right amount of support, you know, we can definitely get there, and hopefully, not only this album, you know, obviously I've got a Bob Geldof's voice in my head going like, buy this bloody album, you know, but we could do more.
Can I say that this week, I've got a very close friend, one of my closest friends in the world. He's one of the world's leading eminent brain surgeons. He deals with brain tumors. Now, I've been talking to Charlie Teo, that's the guy. I'm going to put him in touch with you all, with Ian and everybody. He's got some amazing advances that are already happening in his charity, which is the Charlie Teo Foundation, where they're trying to find a cure for brain tumors. He said there are links, and he said a lot of his research he would love to give over to Cure Parkinsons or whoever and work with them with it. So that was just something that came. He saw that I'd made the record, right? Yeah. He saw Think Loud, and he said, Leo, I didn't know you're involved in Parkinson's. He said, I've been studying all this. I can help. So the net is spreading, and the net is going to spread bigger out of this. You know, this is going to be a record that's going to make a great effect in people's lives. It's going to keep people alive as well.
Yes. Now, I'm going to put the link on the video and also on the audio of this podcast. So if you want to buy it, and I really encourage you to buy it, jump on, grab the album and CD as well. It's a 2-disc album. I know this is your baby, okay, Paul and Leo and Ian, but is there any track that you sit there and just go, you pinch yourself and go, how the hell did that happen?
I know what Ian's going to say.
I think the track of the Kodo drums and Hank Marvin, man, one of my great heroes, and the way Paul put it together. And the Kodo drummers, I got an old drummer friend of mine, Steve Jackson from Cornwall, who went over to Japan and worked with the Kodo drummers. And I told him about it, and he went, wow, that is big. And, I love the whole idea. And Roger Taylor's a mate. So, it's that boggles me, that one. That mind boggles me how you got that together. Hats off.
And it's a great track. It's a great track.
That's the one.
That's the first one I picked.
Yeah. And isn't it wonderful that there's I guess there's always like that on every album. Yes, the album's fantastic, but then there's one song that you just go, holy shit, how did that happen?
I know. There is another one. I mean, Arthur Brown singing "House of the Rising Sun" is pretty up there. I got to tell you, that is outrageous. Because if you remember the record "Fire" and Arthur Brown and how bloody crazy he always was, and for him to deliver it in that sort of way. That's a beauty in its way. I don't think anything, John Cooper Clarke as well. But wow, to get Arthur Brown on record after all this time is a wonderful achievement as well.
It is.
He does an amazing job with that House of the Rising Sun, and it does. I'm very proud of the arrangement. I'm really proud of the arrangement, because if you hear the way people would normally think of that, I'd already been singing it with my jazz quartet as a swing, swinging it up. So and it's really jaunty. It works really nicely. And John Altman does the sax solo. It's just beautiful. Great. But Arthur just goes, he just delivers.
Yes.
He owns it.
When you see the video of that with all his makeup, Claire did all his makeup, and that is him recording it. That's him singing that live. That's me on the other end of the computer recording that at the same time. But I was just going to say about Kodo drums. I don't know if it's we'll have to figure out what the distance is, but it could be in the Guinness World Book of Records for the biggest distance between the drummer and the bass player. Gary Taylor's on bass in Perth, and Roger Taylor was on drums in Guildford. So we might have to work that out.
Oh, that's outstanding.
Biggest stage in the world.
That is outstanding.
Well, that puts the international angle of it all, because we're all Marcy's in LA, and we're all over the world, aren't we?
Yes,
which is great.
Going back to Arthur, I worked with him for 4 years. 1996, I published into the Media, which is a new business festival in Cannes. And by the end of the evening, he said, "You know more about me than I do." Well, I was a big fan, and I brought him over to Lewis in Sussex, and the story is he ran me up, and I shouldn't tell it. It's a bit. A bit of version. He hadn't been paid any royalties for Fire, and Chris Stamp was the man to track down, and it took me 6 months to get him. Eventually, he called me up and said, "I'm coming to England next week. Arthur must be at the meeting." So Arthur said, "Well, that's all really well. I'm in hospital having a hernia operation. You have to come there." So me and Chris sitting by Arthur's bedside in Lewis. He's just had an operation overnight with no anaesthetic. Chris walks in, gives him $500. Have some royalties, Arthur. And it was a very fascinating time of my life. He had a very good friend. Yes. And I was blown away that he did this track, or 2 tracks.
Also got him singing All Right Now with Sonia Christina. That's quite something as well.
That's something as well.
That was good.
One of the first gigs I ever did. I got an Arthur Brown. One of the first gigs I ever did before I turned professional. 1968 or so. I was at the Bognor Shoreline Club in Sussex. Is that in Bognor? And we were backing Arthur Brown, me and my band, and he scared me shitless. I mean, he was such a presence. And of course, he did the fiery head and everything like that. And afterwards, I kind of went, "Oh, Mr. Brown, can I ask some advice?" And he said, "Well, the best advice I can give you, young man, is keep heading in a forward direction." I've never forgotten that.
Oh, that's funny. That is.
So
funny.
You see, there's a few legends on here, which is great.
There is, and just I guess in closing, my favourite, being a lover of the '70s disco, "I Can't Stand the Rain." What a great track with Ann Peebles. I mean, what a find.
It's a great recording as well.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. I was involved with that.
You were involved with that?
Yeah. Anne heard a version that they'd done at Steve Marriott Memorial. And she freaked out and said how great it was, the real deal.
Yeah.
And Debbie was nuts over it. When you record it, she came over.
Yeah.
They can get the barbecue. And they did it at Debbie's house.
Yeah.
What a track.
What a track.
Huh?
What a track.
It's a wonderful recording, Ian, is what I'm saying. I mean, I know Pete Bullock's involved, but Deb's husband on guitar, and it's a great band. The whole thing's great.
Mm.
Yeah. Jerry Shelley on drums.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's a lovely girl, Deb. She's really had great talent.
Oh, we mustn't forget you.
Oh, come on.
And
listen, it's a record we're all very proud of, I think, because basically it's been, look, these guys have done an incredible amount of work. I mean, Ian has tirelessly emailed me almost every day with another suggestion. I'm fire back as much as possible, and Paul as well. It's been a great collection of minds on this thing. And I think that it's a great product and it's something we can all be really proud of. And please God, it gets out there to the public and they appreciate it. And, I think everybody knows somebody who's affected by Parkinson's. That's another thing that we've got to make a point of.
Yeah.
So, here we are. We're musicians. We're in the music business. We're people who either play instruments or sing or make records or produce or manage in the case of Ian. But we all feel that the music industry is stepped up this time to really do something, and we're proud of that.
Yeah, and you should be. It definitely is a fantastic album. Great collection there, and just go and buy it. Go and buy a copy of it. Don't just stream it. Buy it. I'm listening to it and going, I can't wait to put it on my turntable.
Let's not forget it's on CD as well.
And CD.
We mentioned vinyl, but it's also on CD, and I think online as well. You guys.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in the collection. You get two vinyls, the CD, and a download voucher, which I think you both of you have already used those, right? So you can download from vinylcodes.com.
Yes.
You can download the WAV files, and then online you can stream 15 of the tracks. So the live tracks and Leo's Eleanor Rigby are only on the hard vinyl and CD.
Yes.
So it's another good reason for people to buy the product, and that should be also promoted. When you talk about it, it's really important to say to people. The other thing, just from a practical point of view, Shane, is that I think the PMP price is the same wherever it goes in the world.
Yeah.
So just because somebody's in Tasmania or Australia or LA, it doesn't matter. They go to the link. They can pay in their local currency. I think they can pay in pounds, US dollars, Australian dollars, whatever. So it's a fairly straightforward, and every ounce of the profit is going to Cure Parkinson's.
Like you said, jump online. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, you should be able to grab a copy of it. And even though it's coming from the UK, it'll still arrive here faster than Australia Post arrives. So there's that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Shane, for talking to us and supporting the project.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure.
But thank you for reaching out, Shane, and thank you guys in England for coming back to me so quickly, because I thought, we got to do this.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you all.
Thank you very much, Shane.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast, and head over to Facebook at The Long Way to the Top Podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.